Well, I think the instant gratification can come working backwards. So if somebody is kind of in that mindset and they can recognize they're in that mindset, coming to a real estate agent or a lender and saying, I want that oceanfront Malibu house. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. Great. I can tell you how to get there, and we'll see when we get kind of to the bottom of what that takes,
right?
If that's where you're at, and how do we get to step 2, 3, 4, 5? I think a lot of financial advice comes from the bottom up with like, okay, you just look like you're in a mess right now, so let's fix that. But if you don't know what the goal is, how can you fix something?
Welcome, everybody, to the Crosby Show Homes podcast. I'm so excited today to be joined by a good friend of mine, Max Vaughn, lender extraordinaire. Max, thank you for being on today. I'm so excited today because this topic has probably been one of the most requested topics to jump into.
Good to know.
Which is just based on specifically, new buyers who are looking for, their first time, property to get into. And then specifically, talking about Gen Z and, also new home buyers, first time home buyers. But I think a lot of them, they just don't have, they don't realize they actually can get real estate properties. Yep. And a lot of them are looking at like the prices of homes right now. And they're just like, there's no possible way. It's just, it's way in the future, or I'm going to have to rent forever, or, it's not for me. And excited to have you here to discuss, that there's a lot of hope for them,
Oh, there's nothing but hope and more, I guess.
I love it. Hope. I love it. So before we jump into that, though, I want to get to at least our audience for them to get a chance to know who you are, give us a little background. You're welcome to share anything in terms of our history together. Though I know that made it seem now that we were lovers. That is not something. Or maybe it was.
Yeah. We'll let them determine.
By the end of the podcast,
cues.
You'll make your own decisions for yourself. So, Max, who the heck are you?
Who am I?
Yes.
Funny that you frame it that way. So I decided to do a post on who am I?
Oh, really?
On Instagram a few months back. But I titled it, What Do I Do?
Okay.
To kind of give context to what does a lender do. Uh-huh. Posted it. My wife immediately came running down the stairs. Was like, you have to delete that post. And I was like, why? What's going on? She was cracking up. She was like, it makes it seem like you have no idea what's going on. Like, what do I do? Like an existential crisis. So,
weird.
Quickly changed the title to that, but renamed it. I think like Meet Max or something like that.
Max,
something a little more direct. But yeah, who am I? I came into the real estate world about 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
Always been interested in it, but ironically, I actually steered myself away from real estate back in 2008 when I went to college for business, finance, and accounting.
What about 2008 would ever have steered you away from real estate?
Not the professors coming in day after day being like, good luck, everyone.
Yeah. We're screwed.
You might need to find a different career.
Wow.
So I actually did that. I went to the registrar's office at the university I went to back in North Carolina and signed up for education classes, which wasn't so much a fallback. I always had an interest in it. I taught surf lessons in all throughout high school and college. So I always liked that mentor relationship, teaching somebody that with a different range of skills, teaching a 5-year-old like what they needed to know to surf to a 50, 60-year-old that just wanted to kind of check it off their bucket list and kind of approach them and individualize that instruction that way. So it was something I always like had a knack for, I always enjoyed. So made it formal, went into education, which is where I met you, at a school that we both worked at in Hermosa Beach here in the LA area. Been working there for over 10 years. And then when my wife and I decided to really get serious and buy a house about 2.5 years ago, back in 2020, got aggressive, really wanted to know what it was going to take. We were under the misconception, like so many people are, that it takes 20%, and in the LA area, like it's all that you need is really daunting and really overwhelming. So we finally linked up with Kind Home Loans, which is the company I work with now. And they just made the process really approachable, really simple, really easy to understand, and even enjoyable, to the point where I was like, I want to do this. I want to bring in my education to this world, or my background in education into this world, so that it can be approachable and easily understood by everyone.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good. Well, and I think one of the things I want to touch on too is the fact that, like, you know, the educational component, that's something that you and I obviously did together, and we worked, you know, in education, and both in a sense still do.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what attracted, you know, me to you, and sort of being a lender, is that we both have a sort of a similar heart in wanting to really educate the people who we are serving, our clients, which I'm really excited to do today. Especially, again, like these Generation Z, these new home buyers who are right now kind of looking at a market that, you know, the headlines are saying, do anything but sell, or, you know, some are even saying do anything but buy, or, you know, you're seeing like this kind of hodgepodge mixture of like both of these mixed messages.
Right.
And, you know, I'm excited to bring some clarity to that today. And, but yeah, I mean, definitely like the education component, I think, is something at this point, my viewers, people who follow me on social media, they recognize like that I care about educating people more than probably anything else, because real estate really is such an incredible moneymaker for you, in whether it's your personal property or assets you own in investment properties. So that being said, let's jump right into this.
Yeah.
What do you think about the current market we're in? You know, I'm sure no one's ever asked you that question before.
No, it's not talked about at all.
Never.
Not enough.
Isn't it incredible? Wow. So let me be the first to ask you, Max, what do you think about our current market that we're in, and the opportunity it presents for buyers, specifically Gen Z and first-time home buyers?
It's a big question. Layered. I think the market right now is dynamic. It's always dynamic, and it's really easy to look at what a market was to say, oh, well, it's different now, so here's like how we're going to try to define the market today. It's easy to look back at 2008 to go to an extreme and know exactly what that was in retrospect, in hindsight. When it was all going down, it was the same conversations we're having today, like what's happening, what direction is it going in? And so to give my quick kind of singular answer to what's going on in today's market, it's dynamic. And I think you need to be educated both from a real estate standpoint and from a loan standpoint as a buyer of what different avenues are now available. And it really depends on the financial profile and the want and the demand of the buyer. For some people, I could say like this is the best time to buy, depending on what your intentions are. If you want to go in on an investment property, potentially flip it in a few years or hold on to it and make money off of it long term, easy, this is a great time to buy. First-time homeowners, it's a little more tricky. Doesn't mean it's not a good time to buy, but it's going to take a little more tact than it felt like it did just a few years ago. And it was easy to say a few years ago that it's a good market because interest rates were down. Yeah. It was an easy sell. Yeah. Interest rates are down, go for it.
Well, it's that it was kind of like that mob mentality in a sense that I always bring up. It's like people have been so tuned in to think one extreme or another.
Exactly.
So whether you look at like politics, whether you look at the market, it's all the same. It's just like it's either we're all for it or we're all against it, and that's all the headlines are ever gonna say.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, right now, especially with interest rates being higher than they usually are, it's really easy for headlines to say, no, you shouldn't buy right now. The interest rates are too high. You know, it's foolish to buy. You know, I've seen all of them.
Right. And language is crucial. You just said that they're higher, and that's perfectly said. They're not like outrageously high. They are higher than we have experienced them over the past few years. So yeah, it's going to cause some some pause for a lot of buyers
Yeah.
into, is this the right time to buy? Yeah, in comparison to 2 years ago, for sure.
Right.
But what if they keep going up?
Right.
You're going to look back at this time and say, why didn't I do that in 2022?
Right. Or likewise, if they go back down. Because the thing is, like, what I'm figuring out with a lot of people who I'm representing as clients right now is you're able to secure these deals like in these properties that were unheard of even 3 months ago.
Right.
You know, we're seeing list prices get slashed down hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, you know, instead of competing with 20 offers on the table, you're competing with no one.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just your offer.
Right.
I mean, just this past week, I had a property that I was showing buyers, and buyers came, we saw it, they liked it, everything was really nice about it. Home is in Moore Park, nice area, 3-bed, 2-bath. The listing agent, being a good listing agent, called me to follow up. And by the way, that right there wasn't even something that existed months ago because they were too busy collecting the offers that were coming.
Yeah.
But listing agent calls to follow up and then proceeds to tell me that, hey, you know, my sellers have lived in this property for 40 years. They have plenty of equity in it. We are willing to give you $60,000 on closing, seller concessions, if you guys write an offer, and that can go towards whether it's paying down your interest rate, whether it's, you know, you want to just build a brand new kitchen and new bathrooms, or you want to completely cosmetically repair the house, which, by the way, this, to be completely clear, this was not a flipper. Everything in the home was super well taken care of, like clean, completely ready to be move-in ready. And what is even crazier is that when I brought it back to my clients, before I did that, I even asked the listing agent straight up, hey, well, do you think we could even pull down the list price as well? I know that's a big ask, but would you be willing? And they were willing to not only do the $60,000 credit, but also come down potentially $10,000 or more in list price. Because something a lot of people don't understand is that, especially when you're using a loan, there is sometimes a maximum of how much you can get in seller concessions. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that money is off the table for you. Like, you can get your maximum, let's call it, if it's 30,000 max, you can actually get. And for our viewers, we'll jump into the reason why this is in a minute here. But let's say the max you can get in seller concessions is $30,000. I could easily go to the listing agent and say, hey, you know, the max we can get with our particular type of loan, whether it's FHA, whether it's conventional, is $30,000. Would you be willing, though, then to take the rest, the other $40,000 or plus off the list price? They would have been ready to do it immediately. And to me, when I hear that language and I'm talking to this listing agent and I think back to 2021 or even early 2022, when we were having 20 plus offers on these homes, and everyone was saying, buy. You're never going to see better interest rates. This is the time to buy. Like, is it really better to secure a home that you were going to get $100,000 over asking price in as-is condition, writing off all your contingencies so that you have no idea whether your asset actually is a good one or a bad one. And like, doing all of that, paying all this extra money out of pocket, knowing you're going to have to pay another $50,000 plus in rehab to just secure the 3.5% rate or 3% rate. Like, that is the smarter decision than really going out and being methodical, figuring out which seller is motivated, has equity, is willing to come down, pay, but you get a $30,000 to $60,000 credit just to pay down your interest rate, which might even get it close to that 3.5% that it was. Like, that's not a smart buyer's market. That's where the headlines drive me crazy. Because it is not a one size fit all. You really need to get out there and start looking and have an agent who's willing to look and find these types of motivated sellers, because you could be missing out on one of the best deals of your life. And then when the interest rates do go back down, you refinance it. So now you've secured a lower loan over the course of 30 years.
Bingo.
You know, it's just insane to me.
Or you nailed it. One size doesn't fit all. And I think coming back to something I said a minute ago, like you need to have a well-versed lender. You need to have a well-versed real estate investor, which is your personal background, but then also as an agent, to know how to move the pieces right now. Because if you go in blindly, you're going in like if it were 2021, 2022, where so many people got the keys to a home that they had only toured for 30 minutes maybe before they ran back to the car, to
Not
the
even,
office.
sometimes even virtually.
Yeah. And wrote an
It's
offer
crazy.
letter. My wife and I, when we were throwing down offers in 2020, it was sometimes 5-6 a day.
Wow.
Before we finally landed where we were happy with the situation. But yeah, you're not experiencing that right now. And even psychologically for a lot of borrowers and buyers right now, to be able to go home and like think about it is worth its weight in gold.
Right.
It's a big deal to own your first home.
Right.
It's a psychological investment as much as it is a financial one.
Yeah.
Especially with why you're buying it. Is it a investment property that you're trying to make money off of? That's a big risk you're taking from a business standpoint. Or is it going to be your home where you go to every day and sleep, raise your kids? It's a big psychological decision, and being able to like sit on it, sleep on it is huge.
Yeah. Well, and having that time and having that availability to keep your what we call contingencies in place, the ability to actually vet a home and, sort of slow things down as a buyer so that you really know you're making a good but important, sometimes most substantial financial decision of your entire life.
Yeah.
That just didn't exist in the market we just came out of. And we finally have an opportunity to pause, to breathe, and say, is this home really for me?
And make some moves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What I want to jump into talking about next is, our new home buyers specifically, and specifically, even more specifically, Generation Z, Gen Z. And I'm going to talk in language that maybe our audience doesn't understand here, but like the products that exist for them.
Thank you.
Which for our audience, like that simply means like the loans that are available to you, right? We call them products essentially. But let's jump into this a little bit because, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I think that there's a lot of people who are new home buyers that are out there, or wannabe home buyers out there, that are probably looking at their finances and they're like, we can never do this. Like a home is just too expensive, or we can never come up with the 20% down we need, or the 10% down we need. It's so, we're going to need help. We're going to need our parents. And frankly, there are a lot of people out there who just don't have that luxury. They don't have the help from family or someone who they know, or a deceased aunt from like a long lineage away.
Totally.
With a will, like it just doesn't exist. Yeah. So let's jump in. Gen Z, what are we offering them? What are things that you can do as a lender to take care of them, get them in our property?
Well, two things I just want to echo and highlight that you just broke through that I think most people don't understand or even acknowledge. Products. You're right. There isn't just a mortgage.
Yes.
Coming into buying a home, you just don't get a mortgage. The language again around it makes it seem like it's just one single entity that you have to like go scrap for and like hustle to go get. Yeah. There's, dare I say, an infinite amount of products out there, different avenues to get into a mortgage. You also went ahead and said that you can put 10% down. That is an avenue in. That is a mortgage product that you can put 10% down. You can put as little as 3.5%. There are some options out there for as little as 0 that we can talk about. But yeah, there's so many different ways to get into a mortgage that is personalized for the borrower, for the buyer.
So let's unpack that a second, because you probably perked a lot of ears when you said there are some products that could be as little as zero. You know, a lot of people probably right now are just like, wait, what? Like, there's even a way for me to do that. What do those down payment assistance programs, we call them DPA programs, what do they typically consist of? What's typically the process? And what would you need as a lender to even make that feasible for, you know, for a first-time home buyer?
Well, more to oversimplify it, again, I cannot stress enough on this show and this conversation that at the end of the day, everything is personalized. As a lender, we want to see your full financial profile. Different than a financial portfolio. I've had some clients get confused by those two nomenclatures, but we're looking at a financial profile. Who you are financially, how much money, to oversimplify that, how much money do you have? But where is it? How's it stored? Where is it coming from? So on and so forth. The dead end. Yeah. We need to know that as much as what's actually on your debit card.
Right.
So with that, piggybacking off that context, we need, in order to qualify for something as low as 0%, you would need to qualify for it. We would need to look at what your financial profile is and determine, is that the actual best avenue for you?
Right.
And I say that because it does come at a cost later. You do have to pay for it through a higher interest rate down the road. So you end up working it off, so to speak. It's not just coming to you free, so to speak. Anyone that's taken an economics class, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? It does help you get into the product, into the home, into the mortgage product, but it does come at a cost.
Right.
So looking at the person's financial profile, we want to say, understand, is that the actual best way to get you into a home? And for a lot of people, it might be.
Right.
If you don't have a lot of cash on hand. But more often than not with first-time home buyers, we're looking at 3% down, 3.5%, sometimes even 5% with a conventional loan.
Gotcha.
And you know, we work with those clients to see where can that money come from. If you don't actually have it on hand right now, where could it come from? Can you work with the 401k, which I understand a lot of Gen Zs maybe don't have. I was actually looking at the numbers, and about 25% of Generation Z do have some sort of retirement
Interesting
portfolio, which is more than I thought.
Yeah, same here.
But still low when you're talking about an entire generation. So we're looking at where the other finances can potentially come from and kind of putting together a plan for that.
Yeah. I think that what you have alluded to a couple of times now is this idea that it's not a one size fits all.
Exactly.
Like, it really isn't. You know, and I can't stress enough like how important it is to have, you know, at least like that initial conversation with a lender who you trust. And, you know, obviously, you know, with my own clients, like I'm always trying to get them to lenders who are going to educate, you know, and try to give you your thorough options, because while maybe a down payment assistance program with zero down sounds amazing to you, you might find that the 3.5% FHA option or a 5% conventional option might serve you better. I mean, there's so many variables that are involved, and you really just need to like have those initial conversations. So the first piece of advice I would give to Gen Z is, number one, to get your financials straight in your life. Right. Like, you could probably give like the more like lending and like, this is what you should do, you know, get on the phone, call a lender, you know what I'm saying? But like, really, when you strip it away, one thing that school failed all of us on was helping us understand how to manage our finances. I've said this before, but like this idea of, you know, you go to college, you get your 4-year degree, you work towards like that one career you're going to have, and then you kind of climb the ladder of that career, and every single, you know, paycheck you're putting a little bit away in your 401k. Like, that's dandy. That's great, you know? And that's how, unfortunately, and I only say that for a reason, which is the long-term reason, but unfortunately how Western schools have really kind of taught, and even still, like, barely. Like, I know personally, I didn't even know what a 401k was when I graduated high school. Like, that wasn't even a thing. But, you know, that aside, that was what we were taught, was the formula of how you will have success, whether, your career will come together, or you'll buy a home this way, you'll buy a car this way, you'll be able to have a family this way, you'll have this like very suburban, America,
classic education coming from the boomer generation, and then reinforced by Generation X.
Exactly.
This is just becoming like a generation conversation. But,
yeah.
And then, the millennials, us, were kind of left with like this sense of like, we know it should be different, but there's no one that has done it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on?
We got to figure it out.
And I think what's really interesting about Gen Z is that they have the world at their fingertips.
Yes.
Between all the social medias, between just the internet, I'll just way oversimplify it. Mm-hmm. The information is out there. And what I have found that's really interesting about that generation, having worked at a school and kind of watched them emerge without really putting the name on it yet, that is a little more popular now, Gen Z. I think most people have heard that by this point. Is how kind of fluid they are in what they understand and what want to understand. Whereas again, this is kind of a personal observation that I've had. Millennials and running backwards tend to get fixed in who they are, what they stand for, and what they want, and how they're going to go about doing that. Whereas Gen Z is like, prove me wrong. Tell me something different.
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn. They'll change their viewpoints for good. You could look at like the opposite, like it's like a little unpredictable.
Right.
But not going down that track right now. They're willing to take on a new perspective.
Exactly.
And I love working with Gen Z. And some millennials have kind of adapted that. Like I said, I think millennials were left with like, this isn't working, but what is the answer? I'm noticing they're starting to adapt some of those qualities of Gen Z of like, just teach me. I want to know. It's not too late.
Yeah. Well, this is a generation, like Gen Z specifically, like that will understand technology better than any generation before it. One that, like you said, has access and frankly, like the thoroughness to like know where to get their information on the internet, wherever it's from. But like you said, like they are the prove it generation. Like prove me wrong. Like they're the ones who are really questioning a lot of the narratives, for better and for worse. But questioning certain things that they've been taught or that they thought was the the right way to handle things, like that they that they were brought up on. And so kind of with that in mind, the one thing I don't want to get away from this point is that having healthy financial routines or healthy financial practices is never going to be a lost or forgotten art.
No.
You need to start there. And I think, in terms of like, if you're asking today, I'm a Gen Z, how do I get into a home? How do I get the same type of, experience that my parents had, right? Like this is not your mom's market anymore.
No. Yeah.
So it's going to look different. There's going to be different avenues for you to get there. Just like the 401k, example I use, like if you really calculate what a 401k is going to leave you with and you follow the formula and maybe you have a family and a wife and kids and like you break down like how a 401k plus, Social Security, if it still exists, like at 60 years old is going to provide for you, you realize really quick, like, oh my gosh, like I need to do something else and I need to do something else quickly. Right. That's the investing route. And if you haven't checked out the investing videos, please do. We talk about that. But the idea of like, how do I start getting into a property? You have to have good financial habits. So
absolutely,
starting with get rid of your debt. You have to get rid of your debt if you most of it, like
bad debt.
Yeah. So examples of bad debt, credit card debt. Really, you don't want credit card debt to be sitting on, a big, large portion of it to be sitting there when you're trying to go get pre-qualified for some form of loan. Right. Debt like student loans, like I've seen it go either way. It's kind of like more of because people forget lenders are human beings.
Thank you.
You really are. You're not robots. And so they understand what debt is good and what debt is bad and what debt can be expected, and They look at everything. They look at, you guys are looking at financial statements that come in when you're getting pre-qualified. You're looking at W-2s. You're looking at investment properties. You're looking at 401ks. Any account that exists, finances, and the debt. Like, you can't hide it from a lender. Like, you have to be honest with that stuff.
Well, to kind of educate our viewers out there, one of the primary ways that a mortgage is determined, the rate's determined, how much affordability is there for the borrower, is going to be a debt to income ratio.
Right.
So looking at what income does this person have access to? It's not always just like their salary or their paycheck. That tends to be more often than not the primary driver, but it's not always. Again, we're talking about other investments, money from the dead aunt. She's going to be the theme of this podcast.
Yes.
And bless her heart.
Yeah.
But it's looking at all the different avenues that person has a stream of income. What do they have access to? And then what debt do they have? And looking at that percentage in conjunction or in coupling that up with the person's credit score.
Right.
Is one of the primary determinants of what direction we're going to go, what product we're going to go. And then to kind of jump to your side of things, then we're looking at LTV of the property. So a person might have a great debt to income ratio. They're looking good on paper. Their purchasing power is there, but what property they're actually looking at is the risk. So they're not risky, but the property's risky, and that can kind of fall through. So typically as a lender, we also want to know what are you looking at? What direction are you trying to go in? Is this a first-time home, single-family home? Are you trying to flip it? What level of renovations? What area is it in? What market is it in? Is it an apartment building? Is it a duplex, fourplex, whatever it is?
Yeah.
We need to know all of that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece that first-time homeowners need to know, is that we're not just like putting our blinders on and looking at your bank statements. We're looking at the big picture as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So new homeowners or new first-time home buyers, Gen Z, first step is get your finances in some form of shape, right? I mean, get a budget going. It literally, like, this is not going to only help you buy a home. It's going to help you in the future do literally anything.
Yeah.
You just need to have some form of control over your budget. There's some really great resources out there. Dave Ramsey's a huge budget guy. He's excellent when it comes to trying to create what's called the debt snowball and, eliminating large amounts of debt and giving you really practical ways you can do that. But once you have that under control, I think the next realistic step for Gen Z, first-time home buyers, is to definitely talk to an agent they trust, a lender who probably the agent will recommend them to, and just have a conversation. See what it is that your options are, even are, because a lot of people might be surprised.
Yeah. And I would even suggest talking to a lender before you, to your advice, like clean up your debt, clean up your finances. I think you should absolutely use some common sense, let's say, to clear up some debt, get some credit cards paid off, or at least starting to pay off the minimum. But talking to a lender to understand to what degree, how much, what should come first. To your point, David Ramsey, like his advice and the snowball effect, but looking at it from a personalized standpoint. Because I will say a little loophole for Gen Z and millennials out there is you can go pay a financial advisor a lot of money to sit down and give you direction. You can also go to a lender who is going to do it at first face value for free to get you organized, to understand what direction you need to go to get in a home. Yeah. Because they're then in it with you. Right. You both have a common purpose to get you into a loan. Yeah. And so they're going to be able to set you up straight and let you kind of give you guidance on. Yeah.
Well, they're essentially giving you the map. They're giving you the map of how to, get to the position where you can pre-qualify, get pre-approved. Yeah. And if you, who doesn't want to be told the answers? Like, hey, look, this is actually what you can get pre-approved for. Yep. But you need to do this, and this first to get there. And it's very anti-cultural of millennials and Gen Z who are instant gratification.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're trained
Yep.
that way. And, faster internet and social media has not helped us in that regard. But it does take a little bit of time. But if you're willing to put in that work,
Right.
I mean, you're setting yourself up for massive success.
Right. Well, I think the instant gratification can come working backwards. So if somebody is kind of in that mindset and they can recognize they're in that mindset, coming to a real estate agent or a lender and saying, I want that oceanfront Malibu house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. Great. I can tell you how to get there, and we'll see when we get kind of to the bottom of what that takes,
Right.
if that's where you're at. Or how do we get there? And how do we get to step 2, 3, 4, 5, however
Right.
many steps it ends up
Right.
being for you? Sure, let's talk about that. I think a lot of financial advice comes from the bottom up with like, okay, you just look like you're in a mess right now. So let's fix that. But
Yeah.
if you don't know what the goal is, how can you fix something? Because there is such thing, I'll say it again, as good debt versus bad debt. And so understanding those things, if you just go in and clean up everything, you're going to be cash poor, and then you can't buy a home. I've worked with clients that if you look at their financial profile, they're really well off, like in a kind of glitz and glamour way. But they can't get a house because they have too much debt. They have too much bad debt. They might be making millions of dollars, but they're also in debt millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Whereas some first-time homeowners might be making a more modest amount, still something to be proud of, maybe $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever it might be, but they don't have any expenses. They're going to be able to get into a nicer home and a better offer than that millionaire could be. So it's
funny.
understanding all that dynamics, I
Yeah.
think, is really important.
One thing that a lot of, and I'm just going to use myself as an example because
Yeah.
I did not know this, and this kind of falls into that definition of good debt versus bad debt. But one thing that blew my mind when I was first getting started investing in real estate was understanding that real estate investments, houses that you own that you don't live in, are considered assets. Houses that you own that you live in are liabilities.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that. Like, the assets are going to be looked at a positive debt situation if they are contributing to your income that you make. So as long as your properties are rented out and have tenants and are putting money in your pocket, that will actually help you get pre-approved for more. And people don't realize that. And, that's just a small,
even if you still
practical
owe on the
example.
house.
100%.
But the fact that it's bringing in income, 100%.
Yeah. It's nuts. So in terms of home searches with Gen Z and millennials, I definitely have some thoughts on this. But let's pretend we've gone through the steps so far, right? So first we set our goals, right? This is the kind of home we wanna get. It's this type of home. It's the Malibu beachfront property. Then we had a conversation with a lender, right? And we hashed out what it's going to take to get there.
We get a reality check.
Right? And the steps of how to get there,
Right.
right? Doesn't mean you can't, but it's going to take steps. Then we got our budget in place, and we started really taking our finances seriously, and we followed the roadmap to get there.
Exactly.
Now we are pre-approved, and whether it's for a DPA, whether it's for FHA, whether it's for a conventional, we are pre-approved. We have a pre-approval in hand. We have an agent. We're going to go look for properties. What are the best type of properties, in your opinion? I've got my own thoughts on it, but that Gen Z should be looking for, millennials should be looking for, new first-time home buyers should be looking for in this type of a market. Just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm going to keep coming back to, I think it comes down to the individual, less the generation, but to the individual. I will say, if I had to try to over-categorize a group, I would say because Gen Z and even some millennials are still renting, if you're determined to rent, and I know maybe some people are, but I know most people do want to get out of the rental market. There's nothing wrong with going in on a property and still having roommates. As obvious as that sounds, saying it to you, I've shared that thought with so many younger first-time homeowners that they're like, I never thought about that. Yeah, I've been renting for 10 years. What if I just own the property? Let's say I liable for $1,500, $2,000 a month rent at my apartment. Now I'm liable for maybe $4,000 or $5,000 from a mortgage standpoint, but I'm going to rent out the other rooms.
Yep.
You might still have to pay that $2,000 out of pocket, out of your own pocket, but you now own that property and it's appreciating in value and you're building equity.
Yep. It's called house hacking.
Yeah.
You know, and what's beautiful about house hacking is that it a lot of times can help you even cash flow. Like there's a lot of people I know that are house hacking and they don't pay a single dollar towards their mortgage every month.
That can totally happen.
Now you've got people living in your home, or if you have a duplex in the other unit or whatever. And yeah, you know,
and it always depends on where you're going to buy. You know, we're here in Los Angeles, so it's a whole different beast of what you're navigating, neighborhoods, building types. It's all out there. You know, but you can just step outside of the city and it's going to be a different situation. So,
but if you were able to afford the, let's call it $4,500 a month rent for the 3-bed, 2-bath, 4-bed, 3-bath house in different parts of LA, because it really does depend on which part of LA you live in, or even Ventura County that you live in.
Yep.
You change zip codes and the rents can change drastically.
Exactly.
But just to, again, oversimplify, let's say you're paying $4,500 a month to rent, and to own that same property, like you said, your mortgage with the rates, whatever, it's going to cost $6,500 a month, let's just say.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, like I really can't afford that type of mortgage. But yeah, like if you rent out the rooms, or you're able to buy something that has an attached ADU, or you convert your garage, or you get creative, this is where Gen Z and millennials, in my opinion, have other generations beat, because we're willing to break this narrative of like, oh, the suburban house. Like I just have to, no, dude, we've been living with roommates since we were born. Gen Z and millennials, I swear, like roommates have been a part of life. Yeah. It's so funny and kind of fascinating, because when I talk to generations that were, sort of ahead of us, roommates was more of like you did it in college, but it was part of your like fraternity. Yeah. Like it was sort of built, like it wasn't like a normal thing to have. And it was like, you college, career, buy your house, start your family, and you have your white picket fence, and here we go. This is the way we were brought up, was this idea of like, okay, that we're in LA, it's overpopulated, people need places to sleep at night. And I mean, even here in Simi Valley, just outside of San Fernando Valley, like I saw rooms go up for rent that just provided a guest room in a house, not like an amazing area. Home was probably worth like $650,000, $600,000. But they're charging $1,400-$1,500 just for the room. Yeah. And people are renting them. And to think like, okay, get the home right now, and sure, like the interest rates are higher and they're not the highest, and they, certainly are very likely to go back down again. But even if that was putting $1,500 in your pocket towards that, that example I used, that's the $4,500 renter gets into a property at $6,500, and now you're able to rent out 2-3 of your rooms for $1,500 each. Well, just do the math. Like right there, you've almost paid your entire mortgage off with someone else's money. And if you were able to afford $4,500 a month, and now let's say because you're house hacking, you're only putting away $2,000 a month for the rest of your mortgage, take that $2,500 and start investing that, saving it.
I was going to say, because there's a lot of incentives for first-time homeowners. If you're going to live in the home, then after a year or two, you can now use this property as an asset, like you were talking about, and piggyback into a new property. Yeah. And feel more comfortable about it.
Now, something else I'm going to suggest to, by the way, so the one thing I was going to say, you brought it up in terms of what types of homes to look forward to or look for is house hacking homes, essentially. 100% I'm behind that. That was one of the things on my list too. The other thing I think is really important, especially in this market, is to find homes that already have a need to easily build equity in. So I call it the equity hedge. Right. Okay. Yeah. So you're looking in areas that have that are really good, or better, or sort of top of the market that you can afford, and you're looking for homes that are priced maybe lower than most of the top dollar homes in the area.
Sure.
And maybe there are reasons for that. The kitchen needs to be updated. Everything in the home is stuck in the 80s. It's been a homeowners that's owned the home for 40 years. They lived in it for 40 years, and now they're ready to, part with this house. The reason I think it's so important to find homes like these, again, it's against the grain. It's not instant gratification. Who doesn't want to walk into their brand new turnkey, smells great home? I get that. But if you're willing to put in the time, the energy, the muscle grease, roll up your sleeves a little bit, paint some walls, the smallest types of things like replacing hardware, painting walls, up to slightly more expensive items like throwing down some new laminate flooring, or you want to put some new countertops on, or get some used stainless steel appliances. Those types of changes in homes that need it might cost you $15,000, $20,000 over the course of maybe a couple of years, but the return could be hundreds of thousands of dollars that those repairs are making.
And coming full circle to your point at the beginning of this talk, this is the market to be able to do that.
100%.
To get the sellers some concessions out there wherever it's coming from to finance that.
Bingo.
Absolutely.
Because again, if that seller has actually lived there for 40 years, this market is not really going to change the fact that they have a ton of equity in that house. As long as they haven't taken out multiple mortgages and used the house as a credit card, there's a very likely chance that that seller is motivated and is willing to do something and put funds in your pocket. So whether that means, and now combining all these strategies, imagine you're already in this to house hack. You're already in this to find a property that needs a little bit of rehab to build that equity hedge, right? Hedging this market, already being in the green on your home. Imagine those two things. But then you find a property where the homeowner is like, hey, I'll give it to you for $50,000 less than list. And, how about I throw another $30,000 at you in seller concessions?
Right.
Well, shoot. Now you've got a better interest rate. You've got funds for rehabbing. You've got a deal. And you're going to house hack it, and you're going to build equity into it with the rehabs you're going to do. I mean, that is how you make really smart first home purchases. And I do 100% wish all Gen Zers, millennials, first-time home buyers would just keep those little things in mind when they're looking for homes, and partner with agents who are helping them look for motivated sellers. Because the reality is if you can get a hold of something like that, you're not just setting yourself up for success. You're now setting yourself and your children, future generations up for success with just a amazing equity right out of the gate.
Yeah, that first step is the toughest.
Yeah,
no doubt. And what I always tell people, the economy, the government, the markets want us to buy. They want us to buy a home, build that equity. It's win-win.
Yep.
Those that are, immediately making profit from the sale, whether it be the banks, whether it be the lenders, whether it be the real estate agents or the real estate companies, the sellers themselves, obviously, that pumps money into the economy, but then you get it in return. Yeah. Not only do you have a place to live that you own, you're most likely going to build equity. And I never want to say 100% guarantee, but 99.99% guarantee.
And think of it this way. Think about it this way too. All those examples we just used about how to buy this amazing first property, and let's say you get in with an FHA loan and you do house hack, and maybe it's not the the area you wanted, and it's not the Malibu house on the beach, whatever. But you followed these steps, right? You met with the lender. You figured out what you had to do. You got the roadmap. You got your finances in place. You found the home that needed equity with the seller concessions.
Yep.
You put in the time for the rehab. You build equity into the property. And in a year, the rates go down and you refinance. And now you're cash flowing in a property that you're house hacking. And then maybe a couple years pass, or maybe it's just that 1 year. The beautiful thing is you can actually reuse FHA loans if a year passes, and if you're planning on living in the residence. So you decide, hey, you know what? This is cash flowing now. I've got a ton of equity in this property. Rates are lower. I'm going to cash out, refinance this property. I'm going to take that money. I'm going to use it for a down payment for the next home I'm going to buy.
Yep.
And you keep that property. Now you rent the whole thing out. And now it's cash flowing even more because it's a full property that's for rent.
Yeah.
And now that story that was you paying that $4,500 a month for the rent of that property is someone else's story. And you're now the landlord getting your second home.
Bingo. Yeah.
It's that simple.
There's a lot out there. You just spewed so much great information, and I just would I like oversimplifying stuff. Educate yourself.
Yes.
And we're not even going to get to probably a tenth of the ideas and options and things out there today. Right. Just my best advice is talk to somebody, share with them what your ambitions are, what your goals are. For a lot of people, it's just to own a home.
Yeah. They
just want to own a home and start raising a family. Others, they're tired of renting. They want to build equity. It becomes more of a business, of an investment. And there's no right or wrong direction to go, but just figure out what it is that you want, and then work with professionals to work backwards from there of what is it going to take.
Yeah.
Because even to your point, even to get to the Malibu beach house, it could be not a simple roadmap, but we could put that together right now. Mm-hmm. You could be working at a hourly gig right now, and we can still figure out get to this point, FHA, buy your first home, move out of it, start building equity, start renting it out. Right. It's going to maybe take 7-8 years, but we can build a plan.
The fact is that, and again, this is just information for new home buyers, but it's not, no one's going to charge you money. I'm not going to charge you money. You're not going to charge money to sit down and really plan out these things. We want to build relationships, and ultimately for us, in this business, it's those relationships where we can get people into homes, but the process of getting you into it is going to take time, and we know that, but starting that initial conversation is everything, so that we can start building that relationship. We can start helping you out, because everything I just said, what you just said, everything has been an oversimplification, and we know that. Mm-hmm. We know that, but the reality is that without initiating a conversation, without making the decision for yourself, saying, okay, today's the day, enough is enough. I'm tired of paying 100% interest on my rent every month. Yep. I want to figure out what my plan is, whether it's going to take 1 year, 3 years. It probably won't take 5 years. No. It probably won't. You'd be surprised. But you have to have that inner conversation with yourself to say, enough is enough. I'm ready to do this thing. Pick up the phone, make a phone call, and get started.
Yeah.
We're going to do really quickly a rapid fire question. This is something I did not prep you for.
Great.
I surprise all the guests like this. So at the top of, you have to give me whatever the answer is that comes to the top of your mind.
Cool.
All right. Has nothing to do with real estate.
Okay? Excellent.
Nothing to do with it at all. The question is, you win the lottery today. Right. You've got, let's call it the one that we just had, right?
Yeah, let's do that one.
Yeah. The billions that are to your name. What are you doing immediately? First thing you're doing.
First thing I'm doing is, there's two answers there, because of course I already thought about this when this was all going down a few weeks ago.
Yeah, okay.
I think clear out all debt in my immediate sphere.
Okay.
And that's coming from my profession, knowing how much of an impact that can have for other areas of your life. Clearing out our debt, parents, brothers, sisters, cousins, friends.
Love it.
Spread the wealth.
Love it.
In the immediate sphere. And then going on a sick vacation.
Where are you going?
South Pacific.
Sick.
Not sure where. Super isolated.
We can
super
discuss.
Expensive.
Yeah, isolated, super expensive. Buy your own island, maybe down there.
Yeah, let's
just
do
have
that.
it your name as real estate.
Sure.
I'm curious where in your plan giving me some of that money fits. You never mentioned that in your rapid fire answer. I'm in your sphere. Okay. I'm a part of the family that you pay off debts.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much for being on. If you guys like the content, please remember to like and subscribe. I hope you guys liked the video today. Max, you want to tell us about any socials or plug yourself? Let us know where the people of the interwebs can find you.
Yeah. Speaking of Gen Z, I do have an Instagram account. I keep hearing I need to get on TikTok, but right now it's Maxwell Loans. Maxwell, as in my name, but with an S in there for surfing.
Nice.
Kept it nice and cliche. Got some content on there, and
sweet. I'll make sure to put Max's socials in the description in the video. Other than that, don't forget to like and subscribe. We hope you like the content, and we will see you next time.